And we're off. Huzzah! It's time for more of this. As I was just talking before I started recording, I'm not going to do part 1 and part 2 and part 3. I think on the YouTube videos I started writing that, but I'm going to probably change that up. We're going to do some more of Acts chapter 2 and then move right into Acts chapter 3. And we're picking up with Acts chapter 2, verse 42, although I might do a little bit of a review. And we're going to move into chapter 3 and maybe stop at verse 11. That's my guess, because verses 11 through the end of chapter 3 is another sermon, and we'll save that for itself. But, can you remember what we ended with last time? The last class, we were drawing pictures of a sermon. We were drawing pictures of a sermon, which is not easy, guys. It's just when we're drawing pictures of revelations that John saw and visions, it's easy to figure out what we're going to draw on those. But at this sermon, we had to draw lots and lots of these little pictures to kind of get a sense for all the different things that was being communicated. Let me fix my camera there. And so we talked about how Peter was quoting from David, who was a shepherd in his psalm, and how he was quoting in the psalm that he was made alive. But we know that David died in the tomb, and his bones are still with us to this day. And so Peter was making a sermon about the fact that it wasn't about David who did die, it was about Jesus, that even though he died on the cross, he is still alive. And so that was the point of the sermon. And it concluded with, God made this Jesus Lord and Christ, but you guys crucified him. You hung him on the cross. And when people realized that they had crucified the Messiah, they got really upset. What are we going to do? They were pricked in their heart, and they said, what are we going to do? And Peter instructed them essentially 2 things to do and a third thing that would happen. Repent, change your mind, change your heart, and be baptized, and you will receive this gift. And so we ended with this idea. With many other words, he testified and exhorted them, saying, save yourselves from this crooked generation. And they that received his word were baptized, and there were added unto them that day about 3,000 souls. So let's draw 3,000 people. 1, 2, 3, and ... There's the 3,000th person. Good grief. 3,000 people on a piece of paper. Now, some of you kids might think that that's a fun little project. If you do it, I will give you 1 extra credit point, and you can redeem it for 1 extra sneeze. I don't even know what that means. But we're not going to draw all 3,000 souls. Besides, we're going to find out that there's even more souls as time goes on. All right, we will now pick up in reading in verse 42. So what happens is, this is a very special day. It's this day of Pentecost. And so many people go into the water and they get baptized. They wash away their sins and they come out with this happiness and this blessed joy because God has saved them. And so there they are, and they're happy, and his hand is behind the arrow. And they are just doing great. In fact, I'm going to draw yellow lines coming off of him to show joy and blessedness because he is okay with God. So now there's 3,000 people, and they're all baptized. And now the big question is, well, now what do we do? Well, let's figure out what they do. The 3,000 souls, they continued steadfastly. That's one thing they did. Diligently, they continued and they kept going in a very serious way. And what did they continue in? In the apostles' teaching. Maybe I should make this is not, the apostles' teaching is number 1. I'm going to change that. Sorry, guys. They continued in the apostles' teaching. They continued in fellowship. We'll talk about these words. In the breaking of bread and in the prayers. Okay. They continued in the teaching, in the fellowship, and the breaking of bread and prayers. We'll talk about those in a second. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed, right, all the believers were together. Maybe we can make that number 5. They were together and had all things in common. That is a fancy word for saying they shared. And they sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all. That's the way that they shared. They would sell their stuff and they would share the money together, according as any man had need. Okay, so that's how they were sharing. And day by day, continuing steadfastly, here we have that same idea, with one accord in the temple. Oh, so they were getting together in the temple, breaking bread at home. They did take their food with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And here's this really cool line. We looked at this last class. And the Lord added to them day by day those that were being saved. This is one of my absolute favorite Bible passages in the whole Bible. We have 3,000 at least, right? Maybe 3,120. 3,000 new Christians. What do? What did they do? If you want to be a Christian and you get baptized, okay, awesome. Now what do? This is a very simple paragraph, and it shows the things that we need to do.
You keep on doing the Christian things.
You keep on doing the Christian things. That's a good way of putting it. All right, let's look at some of these Christian things, okay? Here's the 4. They continued in the apostles' teaching, in the fellowship, in the breaking of bread, and prayers. I'm going to write that up on the back board. They continued in the apostles' teaching. Do you want me to draw pictures? I'll draw pictures instead of writing words. They continued in the teaching. That would look like this, maybe.
Someone reading a book and speaking.
Okay, here's the mouth. Oh, I got to draw on this side. Now you can see. And so he's got his mouth open and his hand out there and like in the teaching thing. And so here is the teaching. And people are not just standing there, they are really, really listening. So I'm going to draw ginormous ears. Okay? Big old elephant ears. They're really listening. And I will bless them with legs and feet. Well, at least legs. So there they are. That's one thing that they did. We'll write number 1. They continued in the apostles' teaching, which means the apostles are speaking for God like prophets. And so they listened and listened and listened and listened and listened. That's what we do today still when we read the Gospels and read the messages and the letters of the New Testament. We are continuing in their teaching. What's the other thing? Fellowship. Fellowship. How would we draw fellowship?
People together holding hands.
People together holding hands. I think that's right. There's a lot of different ideas in fellowship, but that's a really good way of showing it. So you got person number 1. I'll draw 3 people since I think I'm going to have the space. So here's a hand holding, and here's a hand holding. And do we draw frowning faces?
Smiling.
Because that means they're together.
Bright eyes.
Maybe they're all in a heart or something, maybe. I don't know.
And a heart, yeah, you could draw a big heart around them. I won't have kind of the space to do that very well because mine's wide. But maybe I'll draw hearts over the hand holding. Because fellowship doesn't mean you're all in the same room. Fellowship means you're all on board with each other. For instance, all of us in this class are in fellowship together, even though we're spread out all over the country using the internet. We have that communion. We have that togetherness. And sometimes fellowship is because we tell jokes and do funny things together. And sometimes it's because of the important spiritual things too. But this is that idea of fellowship. They were serious about fellowship. The other thing is the breaking of bread. They must have really thought bread was bad. Break that bread. Break that bread. Take up that. I don't like bread. What's the breaking of bread?
The word separate.
Okay, someone thinks the Lord's Supper. Does it only mean the Lord's Supper?
It means Jesus died.
It's connected to Jesus' death. Here's something. I was looking this up recently. Does the breaking of bread mean Lord's Supper, or does breaking bread mean eating food together? And the answer is yes. Sometimes in the Bible, it talks about people getting together to break bread, meaning, oh, let's have dinner together. Let's have breakfast together. And sometimes in the Bible, it talks about breaking of bread, and it means the Lord's Supper.
Sometimes it means I hate bread.
Well, I don't think that. So this is what I'm going to do. I think for this passage, I'm going to say Lord's Supper because it's listing things that are very, very spiritual, right? There's preaching and teaching. There is fellowship, and they're not just, hey, let's play soccer together. This is fellowship and spiritual things. And so I think that this is, they're eating the flat, unleavened bread. I guess it's going to look like pancakes or something here. Flat bread, and they're having the fruit of the vine. Well, maybe I can make it purple so that it's grape juice. Kind of purple marker. I can fill that in.
Or like red, so it's like wine.
Oh yeah, sometimes it's red colored. All right, so I'm gonna draw it. I'm gonna draw it this time. I really think this first one really is talking about the Lord's Supper. That's what I think it is. I can't prove it for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's talking about the Lord's Supper because it's talking about these spiritual things. So there's the teaching, there's the fellowship, there's the breaking of bread, and there's the prayers. We all know what that is, right? We all know prayers. Now I got to draw praying hands, and I have a hard time doing that.
Just do hands with them together.
All right, that's just the worst praying hands. I better write the word pray so you don't have any questions about what that means. Why is it that no matter how much we draw, sometimes there's something that you don't know how to draw very well? Have you ever experienced that? I think I do a good job of drawing, and every time I'm going to draw hands praying, I go, I don't know how to do this. Okay. There's some other things that they were doing. Let me see if I can get there so you can see it better. Okay. I'm going to go back to screen sharing my my text so we can talk about that a bit. They were selling their things and sharing things together. People were watching the miracles. They were continuing steadfastly with one accord in the temple. So I don't know how to draw the temple. Let's just have, here's a wall, because there's a wall around the temple and there's a gate. And then here's the temple. I think it was kind of cubic, like a cube shape, kind of like what we see in the book of Revelation. And so I'm just going to draw a lot of people in here and draw a heart because they're doing it with one accord. So here they are with one accord in the temple. And one accord means unity, togetherness, that fellowship idea is in there. And then it says breaking bread at home. And here's my big question. I don't know if the second breaking of bread is the Lord's Supper still, or if it's eating a normal meal. It's really interesting.
Eating a meal together.
It could mean that. I don't really know. But here's the interesting thing. It says, breaking bread at home, they did take their food with gladness. And I still don't know what that means. A lot of people think they'll say the first one up here, A, is the Lord's Supper, and that B, this one down here, is dinner together. And that could be. Oh, there we go. They think that the first breaking of bread is the Lord's Supper and the second breaking of bread is dinner together. And that really could be. Because that's something that we do as Christians. We share food and we do things together. But here is the big point. The Lord added. The Lord did this great work. People were being saved. People were being saved by God, and God put them together. So maybe I'll say, here is God. All right, and here he is, and here's a saved person. He's got his hand on him. and he's putting him with all the other saved people, right? Because the Lord is putting them together. The Lord is the one who's doing it. Now, the Christians are coming together, and they're doing this together, but who makes us together? The Lord.
God.
The Lord. Okay. Any questions about that before we move on? I want to read the next little miracle story. But do you guys have any questions before we move? All right. I don't see any hands, so I am going to get back into my reading. Okay. So now we are in Acts chapter 3. I don't think this is the next day. I think this is a little bit later. Now, Peter and John. All right, let's draw Peter and John. Peter has a mustache. I'm just going to say Peter has a mustache. There's his hand. And John has tall, spiky hair, although that looks like a crown. I don't want that to be a crown. I want that to be hair. So there's John. Peter and John. Now, Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour. So they're about to go pray, and they're about to do it at the temple. I don't know how to draw the temple. Maybe I'll just draw something like that. So that's where they're going. Okay, that's the place that they're going to. And a certain man that was lame from his mother's womb. Lame means he can't walk, right? Can't walk. He was lame from his mother's womb. How long has he not been able to walk?
From
His
when,
whole life.
yeah.
His
From when
whole
he
life.
was like,
From when he was a baby. And now he's a man. Is he a 4-year-old boy? No, he's a man. What does it look like if you don't use your legs ever? What do your legs end up looking like?
Bones.
Kind of shriveled up, no muscles because the muscles didn't work, right? And so this man, he can't walk, and his legs probably look a little bit weird to people. Does that make sense?
whitish.
Yeah, probably not strong and white skin and pale.
Hard to make it,
Mm-hmm. And so, okay, so he was lame from his mother's womb and was carried, whom they laid daily at the door of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms of those entering the temple. So there is a gate. Okay, here's this gate, and people would walk in, going into the temple, and they brought this man. I'm going to draw tiny little stick legs, and he is just asking for money. Why is he sitting around begging for money? Why doesn't he get a job?
Because he
He
can't.
can't.
He
He can't really.
walk. He can't walk. And so they take him to a gate that's called Beautiful. You can write the word beautiful gate. Beautiful. And he is just asking for money. And that's not a bad thing. That poor guy, he can't work. And so every day he's brought there. Do you think people saw him every day? Yeah. They probably recognize him, right? All right, so that's the situation. Peter, and this man, he sees Peter and John about to go into the temple, and he asks to receive alms. He asks to receive money. All right, so Peter, John are going in, and they see him, right? And Peter fastened his eyes on him and with John and said, "Look on us." And he gave heed unto them, expecting to receive something from them. He thought he was going to get money, right? But Peter said, "Silver and gold have I none, but what I have I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk." And he took him by the right hand and raised him up. And immediately his feet and his ankle bones received strength. Remember how his legs would probably look like they don't work very well, right? Skin and bones and probably not healthy, maybe a bumpy knee, something like that. And then immediately what happened? Plump, plump, big, strong legs. I don't know if he had like muscle legs, but that's the idea. And leaping up, he stood and began to walk. And he entered into the temple with them walking, and leaping, praising God. What an embarrassing thing for a grown man to do, jumping around going into the temple. Why was he jumping around? Kids jump around. Why
He was
was
so happy he hadn't used his leg before.
He was happy. He was happy. Sometimes we need to let people be happy, right? Even if I think they look a little bit silly. No, he can finally walk. All right, so let's draw this. We got to draw this guy, right? Okay. So here is, Peter and John. They're apostles. I need to make them green. Here's Peter. Here's John. And they are, Peter was doing the talking, but I'm drawing John's hand, okay? Because John's right there. And here's this man, and he's sitting there. I'm going to draw his, oops, that's a bad drawing. I'm going to draw his head like low, like he's been sad and he's not happy. So there he is with his stick legs that don't work well. And then all of a sudden, now he's got bright eyes, a big smile, and a really happy hand. And jumping for joy. And I'm going to draw a big, kind of like strong, beefy legs. I don't know that he was made like super strong, but I'm just trying to show that his legs are made strong like that. Those are tremendous legs. I don't think it's accurate. But it's to point out, right? Wow! How did this happen? This is exciting. This is wonderful. This is just great. Isn't that cool? Now, isn't my drawing cool? No, the point is, when we try to draw it this way, it reminds us this was an amazing miracle. Because his legs, even if he healed them, right? Let's say a doctor healed this man's legs, okay? And made them so that they could be strong. Wouldn't it take time for the muscles to grow?
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever had your arm in a cast? My arm was in a cast once. And it was from here to here, and I really hurt my muscles in my arm. And when they took my arm out of the cast, my muscles were like, and it was hanging down because I hadn't used it. And it looked like a cartoon where I was like flippity floppity, and there were no muscles, and it was really embarrassing. And I had to work out a long time. I used to work out with a can of corn because my arm was so weak, and it took a few months to get my arm looking normal. Not that I have very big arms right now. How much time did it take for this man's legs to get beefy awesome?
A second.
Instant.
Just like that. Miracle. And not just a miracle, but a very flashy, exciting one. Right? All right, let's go back to the text. And we'll finish this little bit. Okay, so he is dancing around, and all the people saw him walking and praising God, and they took knowledge of him. They thought about him. Here, I'm gonna draw them thinking. Wait a minute. This is them thinking. I'll draw question marks, right? Think. And they're kind of wondering, and they're looking at the guy who's dancing around. He's happy. And they're saying that it was he that sat for alms at the beautiful gate of the temple. They know who it is. When they figured out, I do exclamation point. Or maybe, sometimes people, oh, a light bulb went off. You can draw a little light bulb. They figured out who it is. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at that which happened to him. And as he held to Peter and John, who is he sticking with? He's sticking with Peter and John because they helped him. And he wants to be with them. I'm going to give him a blue shirt of joy. All the people ran together unto them in the porch that's called Solomon's porch, greatly wondering. And so here is Peter, and here is John. And what does everybody do? Everybody. Now, I don't think Peter and John were necessarily huge compared to everybody. You get the idea. They are rushing. What? Who are these guys? Well, what do they have to say? What are they doing? How did they do this miracle? They're all coming to listen to Peter and John. And what does Peter say? This is where we're going to stop, but I'll show the very little bit. When Peter saw it, he answered unto the people, you men of Israel, why marvel you at this man? Or why fasten you your eyes on us, as though by our power or godliness we have made him to walk? The God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, the God of our fathers, has glorified his servant, who? Jesus. He immediately makes this a lesson about Jesus. Because here's the important thing. Are Peter and John great guys?
Yes. But Jesus gave Peter the power to do it.
They didn't do it. Well, they said, you know what, all right, get up, do it. But Peter didn't do it.
It was like Peter was Jesus.
Peter was using the power of Jesus. This man can dance and do the dibbity-doo, not because Peter is a nice guy, but because of Jesus. And here's the important lesson. If Jesus can fix legs that never worked, legs that are terrible, can he fix your soul and sin?
Definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is something that we need to remember. All right, there we go. I am really happy that this guy can sing and dance. But it said that he held on to Peter. He stuck with Peter and John, which probably means he kept learning about Jesus. And that is the most important part. All right. Any questions about that? That's where we're going to stop for now, and we'll read Peter's sermon in our next class and some of the results of that. But do you have any questions about this? No?
In the Bible,
Hmm?
in the New Testament, does God ever give give other people power to do miracles without him even doing anything? Like, just give them the power?
No, it seems to me that they can only do those miracles when they are working with God. When they're working with God. There's an Old Testament story that teaches that pretty well, of Balaam and the donkey. And then after the donkey incident, Balaam is going to go try to curse Israel, and he's going to try to say bad things, and he can't. He can't. So I think that when God gives his power, he's doing it with the people who are with him. Good question. All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to close for now, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks so much for being in class. I'm really enjoying it. Take care.
Thank you.